Hello listeners. This is the reading of the Sabbath School lesson for the fourth and final quarter of 2022.
The series is titled On Death, Dying and the Future Hope. The author is Dr. Alberto Tim, while your readers are Percy and Sibylla Harrold. Lesson 3 is ready for teaching on October 15. It's titled Understanding Human Nature, and I'm Percy Harrold. Friday, October 14. If you have ever been in surgery and were put out with general anaesthesia, you might have had a faint idea of what it must be like for the dead. But even then, when under anaesthesia, your brain still functions. Imagine what it would be like for the dead when all brain function everywhere was totally stopped. Their experience in death, then, is to close their eyes, and as far as each dead person who ever lived is concerned, the next thing they will know is either the second coming of Jesus or his return after the millennium. Let's read Revelation 20, verses 7 to 15. Now, when the 1,000 years have expired, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, whose number is as the sand of the sea. They went up on the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints and the beloved city, and fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. The devil who deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beasts and the false prophet are, and they will be tormented day and night for ever and ever. Then I saw a great white throne, and him who sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away. And there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before God. The books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged according to their works by the things which were written in the books. The sea gave up the dead who were in it, and death and Hades delivered up the dead who were in them, and they were judged each one according to his works. Then the death and Hades were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death, and anyone not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. Until then, all the dead, the righteous and the wicked, rest for what will seem to them to be an instant. For those of us who remain alive, death seems as if it lasts for a long time. For the living it does, but for the dead it seems to last only an instant. In the Great Controversy, page 539, we read, "If it were true that the souls of all men pass directly to heaven at the hour of dissolution, then we might well covet death rather than life. Many have been led by this belief to put an end to their existence. When overwhelmed with trouble, perplexity, and disappointment, it seems an easy thing to break the brittle thread of life and soar away into the bliss of the eternal world." End of quote. And then on the same book, pages 549 and 550, we read, "Nowhere in the sacred scriptures is found the statement that the righteous go to their reward or the wicked to their punishment at death. The patriarchs and prophets have left no such assurance. Christ and his apostles have given no hint of it. The Bible clearly teaches that the dead do not go immediately to heaven. They are represented as sleeping until the resurrection." And so to finish today, here are our discussion questions, and there are 3 of them. 1. How does the biblical notion of the human being as a whole, who remains conscious only as an undivided person, help us to understand better the nature of death? 2. The world has been taken over by the theory of the natural immortality of the soul, with all its uncountable ramifications. Why then is our message about the state of the dead so crucial? Why also, even among Christians, do we find such strong opposition to what is really a wonderful teaching? And 3. How should an understanding of the state of the dead protect us from what might appear before our eyes? That is, why can't we always trust what we see, especially if what we see or think we see is the spirit of a dead relative, as some have reported seeing? And now it's time for our mission story. Here with Inside Story is Sabella.
Every Cent is Sacred by Andrew McChesney. Shaimala's eyes widened with surprise as she read the handwritten note tucked in an envelope with 2 money orders worth $110.52 US. The letter came from the US East Coast and the money orders were made out to Global Mission, the frontline arm of Adventist Mission whose missionaries start new groups of believers in unreached territories. I have enclosed a donation to Global Mission to help people learn about the love of God, the letter read. I love God and try to help spread the gospel in my neighbourhood. It was the next part of the note that astonished Shaimala, a donor specialist at Global Mission. The writer explained that the $110.52 donation consisted of pennies that she had found on the street. When her jar of pennies got full, she cashed them in and sent the donation. This gift is pennies that I collected for Jesus, she wrote. I hope it will bring smiles to someone as you share the love of God. Another surprising letter arrived at Global Mission's office at the General Conference a few weeks earlier. The letter from the US West Coast contained no note, but the enclosed $165 check spoke volumes. It was issued by a prison on behalf of an inmate. With inmates earning up to $55 a month at the prison, the donor would have had to work at least 3 months for the gift, and it wasn't his first donation, Shaimala said. A third letter was opened by Nympha, who, with Shaimala, runs the Donor Relations Department at Global Mission. The letter came from a man who had called Global Mission's hotline a few days earlier to inquire whether Global Mission had received a donation submitted through its website. Nympha found that the caller's bank had rejected the transaction. When the caller asked for an alternative way to donate, she suggested a check or a wire transfer. A check for $70,000 arrived a few days later. The donation was the proceeds from the sale of a piece of property. The man promised God that if the property sold, he would give everything to mission, Nympha said. Stories about the faithfulness of people to God's mission deeply touch the hearts of Shaimala, Nympha and others who work at the Global Mission. Whether the donation is $1, and one donor has sent 3 $1 bills every month for years, or if it's $70,000, every penny goes to frontline work. Every cent that we get is no ordinary cent, Nympha said. When we receive a donation, especially when we learn about how that money got to us or why it was sent to us, we are reminded that every cent is sacred. It is the Lord's money. Every cent goes only to finish the work so Jesus can come.
This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful.